106.1 FM, Wellington Access Radio. You're in studio today with Eddie and Leah.
Hey.
Nani's away this week. Nani.
Yeah, we're going to miss her energy, but, you know, we'll try and handle it.
Was it her daughter's birthday?
It's her daughter's birthday, yeah.
Yeah, so no, fair enough.
Yeah, got to spend time. Happy birthday, Mani.
Yeah. She's 8, isn't she?
She's 8 years old. I hope Mum takes you out and spoils you and gives you lots of presents. And if she doesn't, we'll deal with her when she comes back.
You have to come on the show and be like, no, Mum didn't do this for her birthday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, snitches don't get stitches on the show.
we are full snitch supportive podcast. Anyway, so yeah, we have. Oh, I'll turn it up to you, Leah.
You want to, okay.
Yeah, to introduce our. One moment. Actually, I've got one announcement.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one announcement. So tonight, at Bitters and Love, there is a black and gold Afrobeats party. Tendakai is putting that on. I'm DJing that.
Clinch is
DJing that. I think Yared as well.
Is Yared DJing?
Yeah, Yared's DJing.
Go Yared!
Yep. So it's really good. So I think that's kicking off kind of 9:30 through till I think 2 a.m. It's gonna be a good time. It's $15. There is a link. So
you've got to register.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a numbers thing, right?
Yeah, so essentially, because of COVID, you have to kind of say it. So we've got like a capacity. So if you want to go, get in quick.
Where can they find the link?
I believe it's on Zanaka's page.
Okay.
Tendako's page. I can put it up after the show, immediately after the show.
Yep, get down there and see, definitely to see our man, Eddie, on the decks. King and Nancy?
King and Nancy.
King and Nancy now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Always, yeah, so that's on tonight. So yeah, jump on, buy your tickets, and be a really good night.
This will be the first gig for a while.
Yeah,
isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess you've got to take this break because COVID's coming.
COVID's coming and Christmas is
Thanks,
coming.
Auckland.
Christmas is coming, so.
Thanks, Auckland.
And obviously, yeah, COVID's for those listening in Wellington, yeah, COVID's here. So yeah, just stay safe. Listen to the Black House. Keep calm. Listen to the Black House.
Keep calm.
Right, over to Leah.
All right. Well, today we've got a special guest in here. We're going to have a little chat about mental health, and I would like our guest to introduce herself. It's a surprise, so I'm not going to go any further. I'm going to let you do the honours.
Hi, kia ora. My name is Sabina. I'm one of the counsellors here in New Zealand, and I've been working as a counsellor for more than 5 years. I love what I do.
Tell us a little bit about your background.
I was born in Zimbabwe, and I've lived here in New Zealand for 14 years. And my actual background is teaching. I've been teaching for more than 20 odd years. And with teaching, you get sick of it at some stage. So
you get sick of teaching, or you just get sick of the kids?
No, not the kids, but teaching. So I did anyway and moved over to counselling, and I love doing what I do. I really enjoy it.
There's a lot of, would you say that there's a lot of counselling involved in just being a teacher?
I guess so. Yeah, because it's looking after the kids, it's making sure they are all right, it's making sure they are fed, a lot goes on. So, but I don't see the connection. It's quite different.
You think so?
Because as teachers, we tend to be bossy, kind of.
Right.
As counsellors, we have to be listeners.
Right.
Yeah, so that's the main difference.
Okay. Because you've got, I know that there's lots of different counselling styles out there, lots of different ways of doing therapy. Can you tell us a little bit about what your kind of therapy is, what style that you use, and just sort of walk us through what a session could look like?
Okay.
Yeah.
It depends on who I'm seeing and at what time and what's going on, and the age group as well. But my main one is CBT.
So what is CBT?
Cognitive Behavioral Therapy.
Okay.
And then there's what we call the solution focused therapy, looking at here's your problem and where to from here. because many people feel stuck. Oh, I'm stuck here, I don't know what to do with my life, I don't know where to go. So the solution focused is really good, because we say, yes, you are stuck, and have you thought about this? So we are looking at the broader picture. And then we have the ACT therapy, acceptance therapy, where, you know, we say it is what it is. So what do you want to do, and commit to moving on in your life. And then the client-centered approach is my main one, you know. As you know, as counselors, we don't give answers. You don't come to us and say, look here, I want to leave my husband. And we say, yes, he's a bad man, just leave him.
You're not allowed to say that, even if it was a good idea.
Even if you are thinking, oh my gosh, what is she doing living with that man?
Yeah.
But you can't say it. So anyway, you look at the client-centered, what would you want to do? Where do you want to move from here? And listening, you know, feeding back. So that one is the main one. It's really important.
Is that something that people find difficult sometimes going to counsellors, is that they want answers, they want someone to tell them, oh, to fix this, you need to do it, this, this and this. And do you think people find it difficult to then be like, to then have to go, okay, now I need to work out how I'm going to do this myself, or what I want out of this? Is that something?
I really struggle with that quite a lot, because I have a lot of clients saying to me, hey Sabina, just tell me what to do. What do you think about this? You know, the problem is, if you do provide an answer, even if you think this might be the way to go, they will come back to you if it doesn't work.
Right.
So you want them to come up with something. So what I tend to do as a counselor is I provide some tools. Like, for example, someone who is in domestic violence, just looking at the Duluth Model, looking at what's going on in your life.
What's a Duluth Model? What's that?
It's a model of violence where, you know, some people get stuck in this cycle of abuse.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, which is quite tricky. You know, when you are stuck in there, you need someone to help you get unstuck.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of model that we can use. And say, for example, someone is dealing with, I have so many examples because I've seen so many clients with, say, for example, a husband who is an addict.
Yeah,
they will come to you in drug addiction or whatever addiction it is.
It affects the whole family, doesn't it?
It does,
yeah.
Definitely does. So they will come to you and say, look here, Sabina, what shall I do? I'm stuck with this man. How can I help him? You know, shall I leave him? Shall I do that? So you don't want to tell them, look, I think let him crash, and then he'll fix himself out. So you'd say things like, okay, let's look at how can you look after your own mental health.
Yeah. So it's about sort of, instead of because what a lot happens with codependency and drug addiction is that the partner will be looking at trying to fix them instead of fixing what their boundaries are, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. Because there's also we use the cycle of control. You know, everyone in life, you have things that you can control, and things that you can't. So how can you change a husband who drinks, like, you know, to intoxication or anything like that, or someone who is drug taking? You can't, because this is your significant other. So that one is a very, very tricky one. We tend to give them the tools. What do you want to do? How can you look after them and make sure they are safe? You know, what sort of things can you do? But you're not telling them, look here, all you need to do, just go and tell that man to leave the house. You can't do that. Yeah. I hope I'm answering your question.
No, that's great. No, that's really quite. I'm just thinking, like, in New Zealand, we do have a lot of the drug addiction, alcohol abuse, domestic violence, and the way that in migrant communities as well, how when they come here and the social stresses of New Zealand sort of re-energizing any past traumas from wherever they came from. It's so much harder in New Zealand. Have you had to deal with, like having to deal with things like that in your counselling service, where you've got people that don't have the support around them any longer because they've migrated here? And how much would you say that would be harder to resolve than say if you were from New Zealand and you had, you know, extended family or people that you could turn to or deep roots in the community.
Yeah, I would say I'm a typical example of myself. I went through a divorce, and you know, things were quite hard when I got to New Zealand. And I went into counselling to looking, you know how you go, like, what shall I do? I need to get some help. But the people I went to couldn't get me.
Right. They didn't understand your experience.
They didn't understand.
Yeah.
They didn't understand why I was staying with the man who was making life so hard for me. And you know, I didn't understand them either, because they wanted me to leave and they wanted to stay. So there was a cultural clash there.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I decided, look, I'm going to be an African therapist in New Zealand. I really want to get to those people who no one else understands.
Yeah.
It's really hard being a foreigner and coming into New Zealand. You experience a lot of problems, you experience domestic violence, you experience all that stuff. And you don't know where to turn to, because other cultures don't get you. Because we were taught it doesn't matter what happens in your marriage, you stay in there, you cannot leave.
Yeah.
And
then coming to a country where it's like...
into a country where it's like, look, if you don't want it, you can
just leave. Yeah. And there's supports out there for you if they apply to you, or if you can actually understand them or access them, right? Yeah.
And it's hard on the kids too. Very hard on the kids when people decide to stay. You know, there's PTSD as well.
Oh, yes.
From children who experience their parents, you know, divorcing and going through some difficult times. So it's not easy. It's not easy being a foreigner, especially African, different culture, different ethics, different values, and you're expected to live the way New Zealand people live. It's very hard.
Exactly.
Not easy.
I sort of got an insight into that when I was in Australia. I had a very difficult relationship over there, and I suddenly realised it was just me and my son.
Yes.
And it was very hard to cope, because even though I'm a New Zealander, and New Zealand's very similar to Australia, our situation in Australia was that we were on the SCV visa, so we weren't citizens, we weren't residents, we were there to work and pay tax, and if you didn't work and pay tax, basically it was like a domino effect. If you didn't work, you couldn't pay your rent, blah blah blah. So even taking time off to get help was very, very difficult for Kiwis over there, and I know from organisations in New Zealand that are basically watching the watchdogs of what's happening over there. They're watching the situation for Kiwis in Australia. It's actually affecting people's mental health over there. But let's go to the first song, Eddie. This is a good segue right here, and we'll come back onto the next one.
Excellent. So this week we've actually got the first songs from the same artist, from TJ Z. But he's hardworking. He put out a song last week and he put out a song last night.
Oh, good on Z.
So we have Indigo, which was the one from last week,
okay,
and then we have Done, which was the one from last night.
Oh, and we're going to be tagging you, Z. You better love us.
Yeah. Right, here's Indigo.
Okay, the difficulties of people who have migrated to New Zealand approaching the counselling system or the therapy system. I'm just going to call it a therapy system because I don't know what else to call it.
Yes.
And you know, African people are really sociable, and even globally throughout the diaspora, you know, over the millennia that Africans have been moving out into the diaspora, of having practice of solving issues communally, right? For example, you know, the American barbershop.
Not even American. Like my mum leaked like this kind of gem that she had never told me about my dad, which was there was, and it's based off. There's my dad would go to a barbershop in the UK, same situation, and it was, whenever he went, he'd have to find a Desmond's, because Desmond's was a Black British TV series about African or Caribbean family who set up a barbershop.
I think I remember that.
So then, yes, apparently my mum was like, oh, you know, the dad, like, whenever whenever he was needing to get a haircut, whenever we'd go travelling or anything like that, he'd always be like, "Oh, I need to find a Desmond's."
A Desmond's.
Yeah, and that was his kind of term for the black barbershop.
Right. Yeah, and I know like in New Zealand we used to have, well, in Wellington actually, we used to have a couple of braiding shops, one in Cuba Street and one in Manners, and often like that's where when you're getting your hair braided, that's when you're having your conversations and you're talking about your personal stuff or other people's personal stuff, because you know how we are, and you know, or other gathering spaces like stores. We had an African shop in Manners Street actually that was there for a while, and that was a gathering spot to discuss things. So I was just thinking, like, and you know, and I was telling you earlier that in Dar es Salaam, for example, we had what we call 10 cell leaders. I don't know what the Swahili name is for it, but it was like every 10 houses. There was a guy that would that may be a community leader, and I sort of it was a little bit more than neighborhood watch. It was more like you deal with other issues as well in the community. So I was wondering, what sort of cultural therapies do you know of for addressing mental health issues or trauma, and or you know, just emotional distress, and that you think that could be adopted or adapted into counselling therapies in New Zealand, or even utilised by other African community groups? Would you know of anything like that?
From my experience, we don't really have African kids here in New Zealand, especially our children. They are so much into the diaspora kind of lifestyle.
Right.
So you wouldn't look at them as, look, how can I counsel them in the African way? It's very hard. And the thing I've really discovered is when you're African, when you're ethnic, you don't want anyone to know your problems.
Yeah.
If anything, you would go and hide and never tell anybody. Because telling one person is telling another 1,000 people.
Yeah.
So it makes it really hard for people to come out and say, look, I'm here, I need help. So that has made it really, really tricky. So what we kind of try and do is to do some group discussions.
Right.
And never relate any issue to any single person.
Right, that's what I thought. Yeah, I thought it would be something like that.
Yeah. So group discussions are very helpful. Like, you know, hide everything in the group and just talk about it as a general thing. Not as, look here, Mr. and Mrs. So and so had a fight the other day, so what shall we do as an organization?
Yeah.
And you know, from my experience as well, African people wouldn't, especially married people, they wouldn't come to another African person to disclose their issues. They would rather go to the Pakia people. And
yes,
the
I've
Pakia
noticed
people
that too.
are like, you know, we can't help you, go to that other African person.
Yeah.
So I think it's because it's about us talking about people's issues, not in the therapy setup, but just in general.
In general.
So what African people need to know is when it's a counseling setup, it's very confidential. There are ethical things binding. So if you were to come as an African person and say, look here, Sabina, I have this problem, and I tell the whole world, then I would lose my ability to practice. Yeah. Because I haven't kept the confidentiality which I'm supposed to observe.
Right. And do you think do you think that's makes it sometimes difficult for people to seek help because we don't have those groups where you can go? Like I was thinking women's centres or women's community groups or even men's groups or I know that some of the guys have set up WhatsApp chat groups, but you know, like that could just be, I don't know if that would be a similar sort of thing, but even you know, just anywhere in the community where they can come together and know that they'll be supported like that. Do you think that's something that needs to happen or needs to be instigated somehow?
I think that's very important, but you know, the first and foremost important thing for us to do as Africans is to start trusting each other again. To rebuild the trust. Because when the trust is gone, you can't go to that person to look for help.
Yes.
And because also we are a minority group, there are very few of us from Africa and New Zealand. So obviously,
There's
you would
few in
think
Wellington. Go to
there's
Auckland.
a
It's
few.
changing. It's changing. I think that's all Chinese
It's
and
more-
African.
yes,
That's it at the moment.
Samoans do the same as well.
Yeah,
Even
they do.
Maori people, even Indian or ethnic groups. If you're a small group, you're like hush, hush, hush.
Yeah.
I don't want so and so to hear because they will laugh at me.
Yeah.
So that one is a big thing. It needs to be addressed. I don't know how, but
Do you think that, like, in therapies and stuff, we could actually well, okay. I was just thinking of something else about that, because we as African people, even if you're living adjacent to the people who have come from continental Africa, if you're living adjacent to their communities, you're basically there in the community anyway. Like, we've got a lot of kids that are born and brought up here, or they've come here really young, but they're very influenced by the way their parents and other people behave, so that they don't feel that confident seeking support because they know how it will be looked at by the community if other people know about it. And how much do you think that may lead into compounding, emotional distress, or compounding those pressures that they have? Because we've got two very distinct ways of dealing with emotional. You've got the one where we don't say what it is, we don't say where it's coming from, and we don't say anything else. And then you've got the other group that's being informed by how to deal with mental health here, and it clashing that way, even within our own community. So if I don't personally see people who are the children of people who've come from Africa as not African anymore. They're still African, except they've grown up in New Zealand.
Yeah.
So, like, how can we as African people now start to re-inform and re-educate ourselves about being more compassionate in those situations, and not turning it into social ammunition for actually trying to take somebody down? Because I do see that a lot happening in the community, and I think that's not a very fair way to deal with these situations. You could compound it. I know personally of young men in the Zim community in Australia that have committed suicide because that support wasn't there. And that's really sad, because suicide's not just affecting continental I'm not just affecting African Australians or African New Zealanders, but it's also affecting those from the continent that have travelled here as well. So how could we do more about
shifting our community?
Yeah,
shifting
shifting
how our community responds
Yes.
to mental health.
Yeah.
My view is, we say in Africa, it takes a village to raise a child. So if so-and-so is have a son or a daughter or whatever, it would be good as African people if we were to treat those children as our own. For example, if you see a child struggle, it's not a good idea to go and chat, yep, look at what they are doing, they are not doing very well. But if you can, by all means, maybe covering them, helping them out, supporting them as much as you can, and not going behind them and saying, look, they haven't done well, they haven't managed even to become a doctor. My own child is a lawyer, but so-and-so is cleaning at the old people's home. That's what we tend to do, but it's not a good idea. It's good for us to rally behind each other, to support each other, to see each other as family. Yeah. Because back home in Africa, you are my sister, you are my brother, you are my, my younger sister, my older sister. So that familyhood, that kind of spirit, I think will take us back there if we own it.
Okay.
I just had a question when you were talking about almost with you said with counsel, with the people who African couples who may not want to go to African counsel because they perceive there's that trouble. Do you think with kind of younger groups as well, there's almost this point. So from my side of things, when I look to go do counselling, I've always felt it more comfortable when it is someone else who isn't when it's and that's been the difficulty. Do you think there's almost a clash where people don't feel comfortable opening up, but then wouldn't feel necessary opening up, or having someone who doesn't have the same experiences? So if you had a Pākehā counsellor who doesn't have your experiences, if you were discussing your experience of discrimination and how that's impacted you, but do you think then there's an issue where, because people have this perception of how their own community responds to that, they're not going to go talk to someone who actually does get that experiences and who could help them work through that? Do you think that's a problem that comes up with especially younger Africans?
I think it's actually the opposite. With the younger ones, it's so easy for them to accept an African counsellor. I've had a lot of young African clients who come to me and they are like, oh, you know, we really like the way you address things as an African mother, because I'm a parent too, so it makes a big difference. It's the older generation, like people my age group.
Yeah.
I wouldn't disclose my age, but anyway, people my age group would be like, look, I can't go and look for counselling. What will people think about me? But you know, I think if adults open up and go for counselling, it's easier for their children to follow suit, because the children are struggling out there.
Yeah.
A lot of African children are suicidal, but they can't tell mom and dad, and it's sad. So mom and dad don't believe in counselling, the children do. So what shall we do? Maybe encourage the parents to believe in counselling too.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a generational thing.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, because I mean, even we're the same generation, so you know, like our generation, it wasn't a thing to talk about mental health. It was something that sort of came up in my 30s, that it became more of a acceptable thing, and it was more of an acceptable thing within women's groups. And then now it's become, you know, over the decades, it's become more. So in the 90s and 2000s, it's become more and more acceptable. But it was a gradual thing.
Yes.
In my generation, we were just told to harden up.
Yes.
That was a harden up and take it, and deal with it, swallow it,
Don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anyone.
Because they will bewitch you.
Yeah.
They will bewitch you.
Well, I don't know about the bewitching in New Zealand, but like I know, like if I was in Tanzania, they would have bewitched me.
Where we grew up.
Yeah. So my response to that is, I don't care. My grandmother's a witch, so I'm a witch. So whatever.
Okay, Sabrina and Sabina.
Sometimes it's like you got to just act crazier than they are.
Right. On that note, should we jump to a bit more music?
Absolutely. You go ahead.
Alright, so this time we have Run from Makuka and Don't Leave by Oscar Liddell and Timmy. So Timmy's another one of the guys I know from down Dunedin way.
Oh, it's a deep south episode,
it's
guys.
Deep south. Make it sound like we're in Atlanta. Alright, so here's Run from Makuka. Back on the Black House, 106.1 FM. That was Don't Leave by Oscar Liddell and Timmy, and it was Run by Makuka. And
Awesome.
that was this week's track better than anything that Kanye West and Drake.
Oh, right. I almost forgot about that.
Yeah, I've forgotten to do it the last couple of weeks.
You're better than Kanye West and Drake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makuka, did you hear that?
Yeah, I actually did.
Better than Kanye
You better
West and
like
Drake.
us. They better like us, man. Like, we're doing so much, like, boosting right here. Anyway, so we're going to get back to our conversation with Sabina. And we sort of, like, started to touch on a subject about, you know, working with clients and what are difficulties, you know, working with clients. And I was wondering, how do you work with clients that have experienced racism, discrimination, or immigration issues, or even not recognizing skill sets they've spent years curating, and, you know, other related concerns like that. Even supporting people in the community who have undiagnosed PSD. Because what did I say? PTSD. or going through those things. But like, let's start with the racism and discrimination. Like,
The racism is a really, really big one. A lot of people experience PTSD even from it.
Yes.
So what I do is to try and educate my clients on what's going on around them, so they have an understanding and they can know how to address it. Excuse me. So the first one is, because we are a small group, there's a thing called microaggression, where people just come and treat you differently.
Yes.
Because you're in the minority group. And there's a thing called a micro insult. It can be very subtle but quite insulting. Like, how come you ride elephants to school? That's a question many people face.
Yeah. I mean, like, growing up here at a time when there was hardly any, and that it was actually the in-between time. Those sorts of microaggressions and insults was just daily fare. You know. So continue. What are the other
or
things?
Or even the question, where do you come from? You know, it's quite insulting. I have a 6-year-old grandson, and someone said to him, "Where do you come from?" And he was like, "Oh, Christchurch. Why are you asking me? He was born here. He doesn't even know what Zimbabwe is or where Zimbabwe is." So that's not a good question to ask. You can only ask someone you know, like, you know, if you are friends. That's when you can say, "Where do you come from?" But meeting a stranger, you can't just go, "Where do you come from?" to a stranger.
Is it specifically like African people are sensitive to that?
Yes.
Or just everybody?
I think African people are very sensitive to it. Because, you know, what comes in your mind is like, why are they asking me? Am I different? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with my accent? How can I change it? You know?
And it's sort of an appearance thing. I've always been asked, where do I come from? And I'm like, born here. Yeah. And I mean, it was mainly to do, the reason they were asking, I decided or thought, you know, after thinking about it for a while, is what they're asking is not so much where do I come from, or they are asking that, but what they're meaning is what makes you brown, what makes you look different, you know, because clearly I have a New Zealand accent.
Yes.
So asking me where are you from, they can't place me in a Polynesian, something they're familiar with. They can't place me within Māoridom, and that was something that I dealt with growing up quite a lot. And it became, unless you've seen me when I was younger and growing up, I mean, today people go, "But you look like a Maori," or "You look like an Islander." I didn't look anything like that growing up. So I sort of get, I mean, like, you get to that point where I think that statement makes you feel more other than anything else.
Yes.
And even for those that are, like, if you're born, we still don't have an identity in New Zealand that acknowledges that black people are being born here. Black people mothers are not jumping on planes when they're 9 months pregnant and going, "Wait a minute, I need to go back over there to have this child and then come back to New Zealand." They're having them at Wellington Hospital.
And even looking at the forms, if you fill in a form, we find ourselves on the other section.
Yes, and that's only been around for a little while.
Yeah, and that needs to be changed somehow, I think.
Yeah.
Because we want to be included too. You feel like, "Oh, I'm just an other. I don't even exist." So it's a big one.
You might have been a bit upset about what it was like in the 70s, because it was actually Negro. It was Negro before that, and then I was a tick Negro.
That's somehow worse, but also somehow better than other.
That's exactly what I've always thought that, but I didn't want to say it out loud. But now I've done it, and I've done it on radio.
It's like, oh, at least it's not other. Like,
at the time,
identifying who I am.
At the time, in the 70s, we had a lot of African American sitcom programming, and every time I came home from school, there were other black people in the television box. Right? Then they changed it to other. What is that?
What does that mean?
At least when I was a quote unquote Negro, I could see the people in the television box.
Exactly.
And there's my family.
You see?
My sitcom family. I personally like JJ Walker on Good Times, but you know, it's long before your time, Eddie?
Yeah, no.
So I think that's micro-invalidation.
Yes,
No
absolutely.
one is validating we exist.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. And most of our people have that problem. It's not a small thing. It's really annoying, especially to our kids.
Yeah.
You know, I had my children in school and people would ask them, oh, it must be fun, you know, sleeping, sharing a house with lions.
Imagine. Playing with the monkeys in the backyard.
Playing with the monkeys in the backyard. That's
which you can actually do in Zimbabwe, but you don't, I mean not in Zimbabwe, in Zanzibar.
Yeah.
But you don't really want to do that because they'll just, you don't, they're wild.
The lions will eat you.
Yeah, and the lions will eat you. But go for your life.
So what I would say then to my clients is, well, if that happens to you, don't feel offended as such. It's annoying, but don't take it too personal. What you need to do is to discern. Do I have to fight this war? Or just ignore it? And if you have to fight it sometimes, start off by disarming that person. Because they've got the power, they can say what they want. So disarm them. Well, may I know why you are asking where I come from? Is that important to you? In a nice way. I'm not saying be rude. I'm saying in a nice way. Is that important to you to know where I come from? We haven't met.
Yeah.
Where do you come from?
I mean, it's a little bit invasive. It's like saying, who are you having a relationship with?
Exactly.
It's a little bit like that.
Do you think that there's a level where within our own communities we kind of push that also? Because it's one of those interesting ones where there's always the point where whenever I see other black people around, it's like, oh my god, more people. And do you think there's a point where being like, oh yo, whereabouts are you from? Because you're trying to make that connection. You're trying to make that.
Like, is it something that maybe people of black heritage or African heritage, it's okay to do amongst each other?
It is okay. If it's a friend, if it's someone you know, it's okay. But if it's someone you've met for the first time, like, you know, you've gone to a concert and you meet someone you don't even know where they are from, and they just say, oh, where do you come from? So it's like, why are you asking me? You know, so that kind of thing. And so the next thing is maybe to challenge it. You discern, do I need to fight these people? You disarm that person and you challenge it, you defy it.
Those are good tools. Can you repeat them again?
So the first one is discern, disarm, defy, and then decide. Decide on what you want to do about what that person has said. What I do is I move around with a map of Africa, the whole world map. I think because I have a teaching background too, so I like explaining. So I show people exactly where I come from, and sometimes I move around with pictures, show them my house and the kind of lifestyle I lived before I came here.
So you're doing mini lectures.
So I'm doing mini lectures as I go.
That's like
So I decide to take control. Like, this is who I am.
Yeah. I
like my accent. I love who I am. I am positive, my skin color is special. So teach people, grab it as an opportunity to teach people and, conscientize them on who you are.
I think that's a really positive way to respond. Yeah. What do you think, Eddie?
That was good. I've forgotten.
You've forgotten.
I've forgotten what I was going to say.
Okay. I want to go on to...
we've only got 4 minutes left.
Only 4 minutes?
I guess is there anything else you want to talk about, or obviously where people can find you?
Yes, absolutely.
If you're not rushed off your feet already.
Okay, all right. Well, we are based in 2 places, Palmerston North and Petone. Petone, we are in Britannia Street, number 5 Britannia Street. And Palmerston North is 86 Grey Street.
Right. And what's the name of your
Reach Out Counselling.
Right.
Reach Out Counselling. we have a number of counsellors. We have 5 in Petone and 5 in Palmerston.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And would you be very encouraging of African people and African heritage people in the community and the rest of the diaspora to reach out to you?
Yes,
Yeah.
yay, come on.
Because I don't think I
Yeah.
know of any other black counsellors in Wellington.
Yeah, we have some who work at Reach Out. We have some black counsellors. We have some
do?
African ones. Yeah.
Oh, good.
And even our Pakia counsellors, they know how to work with African clients.
So you're educating,
Educating and
especially around the issues of racism
Yes.
and institutional
And things like that.
racism. You know, like that's something that I know quite a bit about from experience.
Yes.
So,
And also, I'll be running some seminars, just educating some of the Pakia Maori clients on how to work with African clients. So it's something we are looking at, and it's going to happen.
yeah, because there can be there is, we can't say that like misinformation about African identity and background is something that's across the board in New Zealand. It's not just a Pākehā issue. With some Māori and Pacific Island people, they don't know much about Africa and they're informed by
Yes.
Pākehā people.
Yeah.
And this would be a great opportunity for other other ethnic groups to actually
Yes.
learn about
Exactly.
the African experience as well, because it's a real and valid experience.
Very important.
Yeah, and we don't have monkeys and lions and guys.
It's like, no, I didn't use a snake as a skipping rope.
A snake is a skipping rope. Oh my god, I just put up my snake picture on Facebook. I used the snake as a necklace. Anyway, alright, so how many minutes we got?
We've got 1 minute 30.
All
so
right.
I think ultimately that's...
Oh no, there is one last question I have for
One
you.
question.
One really quickly.
Okay.
How do you prioritize your own self-care? Because after a day at the office, you've got all these people, been downloading on you, all their energy.
How do you relax?
How do you relax? What's your personal self-care? What do you
First
do?
and foremost, I'm Christian, so I pray. It's letting go, talking to God. And also I have family, very supportive. So I draw my energy from them. And I try and eat healthy. And I try and do the walks and the gyms.
And because we all have to, when we're in this generation, we got to do that.
Yes, we have to do that.
We have to do that
So
thing.
I try my best, go holidaying and all that, which is not always easy. And I love my grandkids so too. They give me energy.
Yeah.
So I do my best to self-care.
And what about pampering?
Pampering, I do my nails, you can tell.
Awesome.
And I do some massaging. I do my best. I try and dress up when I can.
Yeah.
So I do pamper myself.
Yeah, colours, nails,
Colors,
facials.
nails, facials, African hair.
Yeah, we've got to get the hair done. Even us ladies in the other generation, we're not going to say older anymore, are we?
No,
no,
we
we're
have
not
to
going to
look
say
after
that.
ourselves.
No, you just get
Right,
used to it.
so just to cut in there, this has been the Black House. Thank you for joining us. This has been Eddie, Leah, and Sabina. Thank you for coming in, and we'll see you guys all next week. Peace.
Peace. Bye.